close out the first month of the Legends next week with Coach Mike 80. Tonight, I bring on a special guest. I bring on my dad, who's going to join me in just a moment here. But as I do every week, I want to make sure I give thanks to the Rome Sports Hall of Fame. Make sure to check out their Facebook page, Rome Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. They're located at 5790 Rome New London Road in Rome. Phone number 315-339-9038. You can email Dave Sparaglia at sbaradav@AOL.com. I have all their information coming across the ticker on the bottom. They do have a Venmo account, and they can also donate. They have a GoFundMe page up as well. I want to make sure I also give a special shout. Let me just put it up here on the screen. I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Dave Kingwater tonight for helping sponsor my dad. Dr. David Kingwater is proud to serve his community with the highest quality of chiropractic care. If you're in pain and looking for answers, call Kingwater Chiropractic at 315-768-8284. Our caring and compassionate staff will answer any of your questions and get scheduled for an immediate appointment today. So thanks to Dave Kingwater for that. Without further ado, though, let me bring my dad on. My sister had to head over to the house and help my dad get set up. So let me bring him on. There he is. Can you hear me, Dad?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Rock, for putting me on here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know we ran into some technical difficulties, but we got you on here, so we'll get.
I should have called Aiden to help me out here.
Yeah, he probably would have figured it out.
Than I do.
No, he probably would have figured it out. That's for sure. So, Dad, let's jump right into it because I got a lot to get to in a short amount of time. But I had Coach Davis on here a few weeks ago, and I know you played with Mike and coached with Mike. So I want to start with your playing career first. You know, football, basketball, and baseball in high school. Let's first start with the football talk. You played on some special teams at RFA.
Yeah, I was on. See what happened was my freshman year. I played freshman football, and when I left Pop Warner, I was only like the weight limit was 115 pounds for freshmen, and I wasn't even that. So they made me a quarterback because I was so light. Coach Ryan and Coach Rafferty. So I went from. I actually got hurt with my throwing arm, my shoulder that season. But at freshman, we didn't throw the ball too much. But then I went on to play freshman baseball. Then I went on to play this. And by the time JVs came for football, I couldn't play because my shoulder never healed. So I didn't play JV football. So I got on the varsity at my junior and senior year, in which I started at defensive back both years, and then I alternated at wing back with a couple people. And my senior year, I pretty much played all the starting wing back and defensive back.
And Dad, you had a great Coach Davis talked about some of the coaches that you guys played for back, when you guys were playing. Talk about some of those coaches.
Well, first of all, you look back at my career as far as an athlete. People never realized, I'm giving a little bit off the topic, but people didn't realize that when I was in fourth grade, I had a bone disease in both knees, and I had leg braces for 1 year. And I was tutored at home by a teacher, and I couldn't go to school. Papa Jerry wanted me to go to school, Behringer, and go up the stairs on my butt. And the school wouldn't didn't want the liability of that. So I missed a year of actual classroom school and had to tutor. But once I got the leg braces off, I was able to participate, which I had a very enjoyable youth experience, like Coach Davis did. He didn't get into the Little League All-Stars, where we went one game from going to Williamsport, and we only had single elimination, and we played 10, 12 games. And then, of course, like Coach Davis said, we went to Georgia to play in the Dixie Classic Bowl, which was a 6-6 tie. But as far as coaches, I started out number one. My dad was not able to play sports when he was a young boy because he was from a family of 12, and they were on the muck picking beans and topping onions. But I'll tell you, he knew a lot about sports, and he would definitely talk to me about sports. And he gave me the opportunity to play sports at a young age. And he didn't put pressure me to work or anything. So he'd be one of my top guys. But then you go down the list, Ray Vaccaro. Now, Ray Vaccaro was my first football coach, Pop Warner. And Ray taught me a lot about the game, about life, and it was a great guy. You can go on. I can go on. 7th and 8th grade basketball. Chuck Chamberlain. We 7th and 8th grade basketball. Of course, Coach Ryan and Coach Rafferty, freshman football. You go with Coach Evans. I think Coach Evans. I wanted to ask him. I think my freshman team in basketball could have been one of his first or second years coaching basketball at RFA. And then, you keep going on. JV basketball, Coach Ryan, Coach E. Coach E probably was the coach that I always said that he could coach any sport. Any sport there was, Coach E could. He was just a great, great coach. And like your sister says, that he told her, don't ever say you're going to win the league in this, just say you're going to be competitive. He said the same thing to me when I was a head baseball coach at Rome Catholic. I said, I got the team that's going to win it all. Well, we didn't. And he lectured me on that. Then you go on to, varsity uh, football. Coach Bruce was one of my great coaches. He did things back then that they're doing today. And then Coach Bennett for basketball. And the last two, Coach Joe Sable at Norwich University and Coach Barry Mentor at my secondary coach at Norwich. They all were important to me.
And Dad, I know I've asked you this question before, and Coach Davis alluded on a little bit too. When I say, back when you guys played, and even if you just take football, you guys didn't lose many games, if any. But compared to today's day, it's hard to compare teams. It's hard to compare, generations. But where would you rank some of the teams that you played on?
Oh, I think, believe me, I thought we were quite like a college football team in the '60s. Not just the teams I played on, but even before me, we were like a college football team. We were one of the best teams in the state of New York, and unfortunately, we didn't have sectionals, like Coach Davis said, and we didn't have states. But I'll tell you what, we had some guys that went on to play Division 1 that were very good football players, and when you win 30 something games in a row, you got something going. And we were always right up there. But we only played 8 games, like Coach Davis said. We finished up all the time with Watertown, and the Central United League back then was a very good league, though. So I think we could have went really far. And like I say, we were like a college team, boy.
And you guys played in front of some big crowds too at that stadium.
Oh yeah, my God. You know, like Coach Dave said, there was times there where we had get to play the big games like Whitesboro and some of the big schools, and especially Whitesboro. But we had 8,000 people. They were around the track. The stands were full. The end zones were full. The student section, my friends that I went to school with, it was packed. Your mother was in there in the student section. We had 8,000, if not more, sometimes. It was just like a college game.
And I think that's one of the things, even when I played, when we used to play, teams, we would intimidate teams and beat teams just in warmups because, the stadium was always packed, running out of the tunnel with the air horns and, people getting at the stadium. Papa Jerry used to get there at 4 or 5 o'clock, just to get a seat. That's how packed those games
Oh
were.
God, yeah, yeah, yeah. They did that for a lot of years. Tom Perry, Angel Malone, and the boys, Joe Farrar, they got there so early. but they had to have their spot in the top of the bleachers on the 50.
And Dad, how did you end up at Norwich? Because Norwich a military school. Norwich is actually good football. How'd you end up in Norwich?
Well, there was a guy, rest his soul. Just found that out this week that Jimmy Cessna passed away. Myself, him, and we went up to Norwich. Back then, it was a little tougher. I wasn't a big kid back then. When I was a senior in high school, I think I was 135 pounds, but I was probably faster than you.
I don't know.
And but I hit like an animal, and um, I when I went to Norwich, they were number one in the nation in defense, Division III, and Steve Davis, God rest his soul, and Pat Passalacqua, and Coach Charney from Rome was there, and you know, I think Papa Jerry wanted me to go and get some discipline.
Well, Norwich has had a
And
lot of good. Norwich has had a lot of good teams and of all
oh
sports.
yeah, no, we were number one in the nation, and I had a good freshman year there. Uh, I had about 6 or 7 interceptions. I played strong safety. Had 3 against Plattsburgh State. I got the opportunity in my sophomore year. I was second string strong safety because the defense was all mostly seniors, Coach P, Steve Davis. But I had the opportunity to start in strong safety, got hurt, and they moved me right in. I was the only sophomore starting. But don't you think 2 weeks later, I get hurt, and that ended my career with an injury that I never knew I was born with, a defected 2 vertebrae in my spine, and my left leg went numb, and I couldn't play football anymore. So that's when I took up the coaching part.
So let's start with that, Dad. Let's get into your coaching days, and there's so much to get to. But I want to start with, I think a lot of people don't realize you got your first opportunity. Was it Hilton Central?
Well, to be honest with you, as far as high school, yes. But when I got hurt playing for Norwich, um, I stayed that semester, and I helped out with the secondary, the guys that I worked with, played with, and so that was kind of like my first taste. But um, then I came home because I couldn't go in the military, and there was only 2 special students out of 1,200 boys or men that went to Norwich, and I was one of them. So I didn't feel that was good. I couldn't play football. So I came home, and Ray Vaccaro called me and said, "Jerry, you want to coach the running backs for the Pop Warner?" So I did, and I coached that for a year. So then me and your mother moved our trailer out to Rochester because I got accepted at Brockport College. And while I was at Brockport, I coached Hilton Central School, which was a double A school around here. And they were in the wishbone. So I bought books and everything. I had to learn about the wishbone because I didn't know nothing about the wishbone. And while I was coaching Hilton Central, my profile was pretty long here, Rock. You know that. When I was coaching Hilton, Hamlin Western Eagles was a Vince Lombardi, like a Pop Warner program that one of my neighbors in the trailer park, Gene Dahl, said he found out that I was coaching at Hilton. He said, "Geez, can you help us with our program? We've only been in existence for 2 years." So I said yes. So I was coaching Hilton, leaving Hilton, running over to the Western Eagles practice. I was head coach. I got to tell you a little funny story fast on that. We're playing our first game. I had a tailback named Harry Phillips, 12 years old. I mean, you're talking many years ago, 1970 something. And Harry breaks one for 40 yards for a touchdown. And the parents are going crazy. I mean, I like it was the Super Bowl. And my assistant coach comes over to me and he says, "You know what you just did?" I said, "What?" He says, this team hasn't scored a touchdown in 2 years. They're going crazy. All right, so I went from there, and Coach Davis gives me a call. He says, Jerry, you want to come to Rome and help me out at RCH? So I said, well, Mike, let me, yeah, I'd like to, but, Shannon had just been born. She was born in Brockport. I says, well, Mike, I says, I got a daughter now, and I know the money, it ain't the money, but I got to make some money. So he said, okay. So he calls me back and says, how about if you become the head baseball coach? So now I'm telling your mother, I says, well, I'll get my name circulated again. I says, maybe we better do that. So which we did. And I came back and the thing was, I get a call from Mike Orbinati at Proctor High School midway through the season. He says, Jerry, we need a coach at Proctor. And I said, Coach, it's the middle of the season. He says, yeah, but, hopefully if, you stay with it, you can become the head coach here. So I said, okay. So I left Mike, which I didn't really want to, but I kept the baseball job for 5 years, whatever it was. So I went to Proctor High School as a volunteer, a paid assistant, and then I became the head coach. I was there 5 or 6 years. We played well, 500 ball a lot of times. And, back then they had Kennedy, they had Notre Dame, they had U of A, and they had Proctor. So we didn't have all the schools combined. It was a little tougher. Well, make a long story short, I go 5 years and I go to Westmo. Now, Westmo, people told me, well, number one, when I took over, they only won 5 games in 5 years. I think we won 29 and tied 1 and 5. And we won first league championship and the sectional title. Not the sectional, excuse me. It was 8-1-1. We were undefeated in the league. First league win. First division champs in 25 years. And we got beat in the finals at the Dome. Then we in '88, we went 10-0. We won it all at the Dome and everything. And excuse me. Coach Davis wanted me at. They needed a tight end coach. No, excuse me. After I left there, in order to see you and your sister play your high school sports, I left Westmoreland, which I had a dynasty going, to be the head JV coach at RFA football. And I was there, 4 years that you were there. And then Coach Davis called me and says, we need a tight end coach at Hamilton College. And you can be my assistant in baseball. So I says, well, listen, I'll take the job, but I'm only going to be a practice player. I can't go to the games because I'm going to go see my son play. So he says, okay. So I did that. And after that, Greg Williams calls me, says, Coach, we need a defensive coach at West Plain. Can you come back and be the assistant coach? I says, well, I was that coach. Well, I did that for 5 years at JVs. And then, make a long story short again, I was there 2 or 3 years, and I went to Waterville. A couple people approached me from Waterville, said they needed a coach. I went there for 5 years and went to Sequoia with you, and that's about it.
So, Dad, let's go back to the coaching piece because you had, a lot of times I always say that you're one of the only coaches that the places you've been, and I wasn't around for the Hilton Central, but when you talk Proctor, a program that, didn't win a lot of games, you went to Westmoreland, a program that didn't win hardly any games, and even Waterville, right? They really didn't have too many winning seasons before you got there. You've always been kind of the coach that's went to programs with less talent, good kids. We always had good kids, but you found a way to build a program.
Yeah, I always was. I don't know if it was always because I was an underdog myself as an athlete. I don't know, but I always like to go to build a program. It meant more to me to build a program, to take a kid that's, I was very fortunate. I coached inner city kids, country kids. I got to know a lot of different backgrounds and athletes that I coach, and it just meant so much more to me to to develop a program, which I always told you and your sister and everybody and every team I've ever coached that in order to be a winner, first we got to become family. And I always like to develop that atmosphere with the kids I coach and to discipline them to have fun and win, and which we did. And I always took that one kid that everybody said he's a good athlete, but he's going to destroy you. That kid was always turned out to be one of my best athletes, one of my best players, and that's the type of kids. And I always like to build. It meant more to me to build than to go to a program where you're going to win every year.
Well,
Every
and I think it's always, I mean, if you have good athletes and you have the players, I mean, you can win a lot of games. But when you go in with, most of the programs you were at didn't have a lot of depth,
no,
anywhere, 25, 30 kids at a small school. So if
yeah,
one kid goes down, your backup is probably a kid that probably shouldn't even be on the team.
right.
And just seeing some of the places that you've been and with the kids that we've had, and again, I always say we had a lot of good kids
Oh
that we
yeah.
coached. But going back to the Westmoreland team, that '88 team that went 10-0, if they had the state tournament back then, that team would have went a long ways.
Oh yeah. Which was nice about that situation. I can remember when I took over the program. I used to have the meeting with the parents, like Rome does and all that. And they all came up to me and said, "Coach, you're going to win some games here, but you never beat Dodgeville." Jerry Walzak at that time was the winningest coach in Section 3, and we beat them 3 years in a row. And that meant so much to our kids, especially the first year we beat them. That they knew they could beat them, and we beat them 3 years in a row. And we when you won only 5 games in 5 years, and in the group of Herbie Hain and Sean Bennett and Pataki and Bubba and those guys, and I can go on and on. They set the foundation for our program because when I went in there, it was a different type of coach. I mean, we really worked, and they really worked, and they set the foundation, and the kids came up. Greg Williams, he was one of the top runners in Section 3. David Brown, of course, at Proctor was captain of Ohio State. I mean, and Herbie Hain went to Hamilton, captain, and is a hell of a coaching career. And that's what was all about. Kids doing that. I had tight end at Proctor. George Kostakis is a lawyer, graduated from Harvard, played football there. I mean, that's what it was all about. I just liked the underdogs.
And Dad, how hard was it? Because I saw it in my short time coaching what it was like to coach somewhere when it's not your hometown. I mean, you went into Westmoreland that you weren't not from Westmoreland. You went into Waterville, which was a really tough situation. We weren't from there, but we won games. What was it like not being from the school you were coaching at? How hard was it?
Rock, when I first started coaching, like every RFA graduate that played sports for RFA, you always wanted if you were coaching at another school, to build your program like Rome Free Academy's program, which we learned from the best, the coaches, like we talked about. And when you go into it's got its pluses and it's got its minuses going into a school that's not your hometown. First of all, nobody knows you when you first start. So you ain't got to worry about what they say about you or what. Nobody knows about you. But a lot of situations I've been in where there was other coaches that were actually hired, and I went for the interview after they already were hired, and they hired me, which made it difficult. But and not being from Like Proctor was a big problem because they had people that applied from Utica, and I got it from Rome. So it's got its pluses and minuses. It never bothered me because I never listened to anybody. I was there to coach a football team and coach kids, not parents.
And Dad, you got a lot of people on here watching tonight. Little P's down in Florida says can't miss Coach C. Janet's on saying looking good, cuz Bill and I are watching. Frank Pulio's on says Coach, I'm watching. Johnny Rod, Coach C, you never age. Big P's on. David Rossi, he's on here as well. Got Sean Strong. You remember Sean?
Yeah.
But Dad, when you left Westmoreland and you came back, because it was a little bit of a time gap from when you left Westmoreland, even as a defensive coordinator, and you took over as the head coach at Waterville. What were some of the things you learned that were different than when you were actually the head coach at Westmoreland and when you were an assistant coach there? Because there's a little bit of a time gap.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it was very hard at first for me to go back to Westmo and be an assistant coach, even though I was a defensive coordinator. But on the other hand, it felt good to, like Greg Williams called me to coach, and some of my former players wanted me to go back, and they knew that the only reason why I left, I would probably, I don't know if I'd still be there, but they knew I left so I could see my own kids play. And I took that, I went, my kids, you guys were more important than the game of football. And I still was involved with football, had JV football at RFA. And, it was hard, but it was fun. It was fun because I had, like I say, Greg Williams, and I was a defense coordinator. We beat the #1 team in the state, shut them out, General Brown at their field. So we had some good moments. And then I just went to Waterville, because I missed being a head coach.
And I this is the first time I ever did this, Dad. So just so you know this, during the show, I just brought Shannon's on the screen live with us too.
Hey, Shannon, about.
But when Shannon's on the radio show, I usually don't get too many words in. So now with both of you on here, this show may go 2 hours.
Wait a minute.
But the other thing, Dad, I wanted to ask you is when you were at Westmoreland and then you went to Waterville, you came back to Rome. I think it was when you were at Waterville, because I was helping you out there. We came back and played Westmoreland in 2009. It was your first time back to Westmoreland, and Westmoreland was the #1 team in the state. And I think we were 5-1, they were 6-0. What was it like to go back there for the first time?
I was a little crazy, but good, because there was a lot of, if you recall, a lot of former players came up to me from Westmoreland, former parents came up to me. So it was a good feeling for that, but it kind of hurt me a little bit because the time I put into Westmoreland and what we accomplished there, but it was all right. And it was Garth Curtis got hurt and Donnie March got hurt and screwing around in a lunch break, and they cost us the game.
And Shan, I think I got you off mute. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we got you loud and clear. So you can jump in and ask some questions too. But Dad, when you ended up when I got my first coaching job at Sequoia, and you came up to Sequoia as the assistant coach, I know, even from talking with Coach Evans, I think it's always, tough going from a head coach to being an assistant coach. I think wearing the assistant hat, I don't think you ever lose the head coaching hat. But what were some of the differences, and what was the toughest part for you to start when you were at Sequoia with us?
Well, everybody's got. First of all, I was really happy that you got the position. I was glad to see you being a head coach. But when you're not the head coach, well, it was like I told you that one game there. Dad, what do I do on 14 inches? Hey, you're the head coach. Make the call. But anyways, I don't. I think it's different when it's not when your son or daughter's the head coach and you're an assistant, even though you've been and your time. I've been doing this for 40 something years. I had my opportunity at three high schools to be a head football coach, and that's unusual to be at three different high schools. So it didn't bother me as much, but there was times, at a coach's meeting, I'd speak my part, but on the field, I never did. Once in a while.
And I asked Coach Davis this question. I'm going to ask all the legends that come on the show the same question. And I always brag and say, I think you're one of the only coaches, and I'll say the old school coaches, Dad, so don't get mad. But one of the old school coaches that I think not adapted to the game, but adapted to the players, adapted to how the parents are nowadays. And Shannon can speak to this because Shannon wins and gets to the state tournament and they still don't like her because they'll say you don't win enough. And when you lose, they want you out. But Dad, you were really able to adapt to the kids and the parents, I think, from Waterville, and then even when you came to Sequoia. What changed for you?
Well, like Coach, I think Coach Evans said it the best. I think it's the kids today, of course, number one, a lot of them aren't going out for sports because of all these activities they have with the iPads and the Nintendos and the cars. They got to pay for insurance. They got to work. However, the biggest change I've ever seen is in the parents. I think Coach Evans said that, and he was absolutely right. If I said my father, if I came home and told my dad something that the coach said this, he'd say, "The coach is right, you're wrong." That's how I tried to teach you kids too. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing I see as far as adapted to the kids. I mean, the game of football is like block, tackle, think, hit, like we did at our fade. We did it at the schools I coached at. But, it's the game of football. And
I will say, though, I will give you another prop, too, because I think when I came and was helping you out, I think it was up at Waterville. And I think that, your offense was the same offense it was years ago. You adapted a little bit. But I'll never forget, I think it was one of the first games when I came back. I think we might have called 10, 11 pass plays straight. And I think that might have been the most you passed in one game in 20-something years. So I think some of the offensive stuff changed over the years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, come on. I mean, of course, a lot of things we did, we did a lot of years ago that, they're doing now. I mean, come on. We used to run the gun and out of the gun, different things. We'd run a double-double, and we'd run stuff like that. And, of course, myself, playing at all these underdog schools, that's where I came up with a lot of my trick plays because we couldn't man up with people.
Well, I'll give you that. You were the king of that. I wasn't a trick play guy, but I'll give you that.
Well, because when you're under main, you got to do things. I mean, the prime example was Royce, first play against Riskin, you run a toss, sweep, pass. No, that touchdown.
Well, you got to give everybody at least the background of this. So it was at Waterville, and before the game started, before even pregame warmups, we got there a little earlier, and my dad told one of our better players, said, "Go down to the field and start throwing the football. See how far you can throw it." So I think we got the opening kick. I think we were on our own 25, 30-yard line.
Yeah.
And the first play of the game, and I'm standing next to you, and you go, "All right, we're gonna run. It's gonna be 48 toss pass."
Yep.
And I'll never forget Coach Little P on the headset. He says, "Your dad just called a halfback toss pass on the first play of the game, and it was an 80-yard touchdown pass, which ended up being, I think we only won 6-0 or something like that."
Yeah, because what's his name kicked the field goal.
Was that the same game we kicked the 30-something yards? So that's the other best part. The same game, our kicker, who was also our quarterback, Hadn't made it. I don't think he made many extra points the entire season. Good kid. And I think it was like a 30-something yard field goal on fourth down. It was like 4th and 12, 4th and 15, and we called timeout. And I said, Dad, we got to throw it. We got to do something. And you said, we're going to kick a field goal. I said, kick a field goal? Punt it? You mean? You go, no, we're going to kick it. And don't you think friggin' he puts it right through the freaking middle, a 30-something yard field goal.
Yeah,
but,
we only won. I think we won by 3 points.
Yeah. But those are some good kids. And,
yeah, we had a lot of good kids in the 3 places I coached at. I mean, it wasn't that. We just didn't have enough of them a lot of times. But, that year we played RFA with John Dominic. You got to look up the score. We played them at Proctor, and they were number 1 in the state. And I think we lost 33-15. And I think we're the only team that scored in the COL against Rome. Now, I may be wrong with the score, but I know we were the only team that scored against them. So look that up sometime.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Shannon, what's going on there?
Shannon, you can go ahead.
I got a couple of questions for Dad.
Oh,
go ahead.
Here we go.
Well, okay, first, I just got to say this. I wrote it in the comments on your Facebook feed. Dad takes the prize. He beats me in talking. He talked for about 20 minutes straight, and you couldn't get a word in, Rock. But, okay, here's my question, Dad. Are you ready?
I'm all set.
Okay, so obviously the 3 of us are all coaches, and you always hear about, your wins, your losses, your championships. But I think we all can attest to this, that coaching goes way more than your wins and your losses. It's about the life lessons that we as coaches try to teach our kids. So let me ask you this. In all the years that you've coached, all the different sports that you've coached, what has been probably your best, most memorable moment, whether it was an individual athlete that you touched like in an inspiring way, or like a team that did something that maybe struggled and then accomplished something?
There's a couple things there. I coached a kid that transferred from Oriskany in baseball that came to Rome Catholic. And a lot of people told me that he's trouble. He's going to ruin the team. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. And I really worked with the young man, and I see him to this day. And he became one of my best pitchers I've ever coached. We beat VBS that had a couple kids that got drafted in the pros, and he pitched against them and struck them out, and he was fabulous. That's one.
What about a team one?
Team one would be, I would have to say, Westmoreland, because I preach all the time to be a family, and to this day, they are a family. They're a very close-knit bunch of kids, and I told them that I tell all my teams that if we don't become a family, we ain't going to win games, because we're not individuals, we're a family. And that Westmoreland team became a family in 1986 when we went to the Dome the first year, and second year we lost 2-0 to Oriskany. We would have went 3 years in a row to the Dome, and that's because they were one big family, and it's still one big family, very close.
You know what's funny, Shane? That's a good question, because I was even thinking for myself is that, and I think I always talk, and Coach Little P and I say this all the time, but I think, me personally, I think the best job that I ever did was the year that at Sequoia we went 3-5. It was after my first year. We graduated 20-something seniors, and we won games. I think we started off 0-5. And the kids never quit. The coaching staff never quit. We found a way to win 3 games that we probably shouldn't have won. But I think that's what's special about the teams that Dad's been around. I mean, that Westmoreland team was special, and I think the teams that win, you got to have a few things. You got to have a little bit of luck. Yeah. You got to have a season where you do deal with adversity, and how how the team deals with that, right? You gotta get some lucky bounces along the way. I think it happens with all the teams.
Mhm.
But I think when you look at, Dad, the place that you've been, again, when you go back and you talk about the teams that you build, and
Yeah.
we didn't have much room for error on any of those teams because we didn't have the athletes that some
No.
of these other teams had. So I think
No.
the attention to detail, the small room for error, is
Plus
really
the
the difference.
Yeah, plus the fact that we had a good coaching staff. We had a coaching staff that Coach P started with me at West Plain, and you and Adam, and we're ball boys. You guys were just little squirts. And Patrick was the oldest. I think he might have been 12. He was a statistician. Coach P stayed with me through West Plain, then went to Waterville. You guys came to Waterville, then you guys went to Segoy. I think the coaching staff was also a big factor, that we were together for so many years and we knew each other. We knew how to, yell at each other, but, not in coaches meetings and all that good stuff. But the coaching staff means a lot. When I was at Proctor, I went and said the disadvantage there was the fact that I didn't have any coaching staff. I was young in my 20s, early 20s. I didn't have a coaching staff. I go there and I hired a kid from RFA. His name was Dave Bragg, played offensive line for RFA. And I had Tom Hebron, the official. And then the next year I have try to get Joe Mortis a break and get him into coaching. And I had Orbanati, the AD, that was a former Roman, and he was a former head coach of Proctor. So, your coaching staff makes a big deal too.
Dad, let me pull over a bunch of comments. Dave, let me just see what I can pull over. David Smith said, "This is fantastic, having all three of you on together all night long." Jerry.
Who?
David Smitty.
Oh, Smitty.
Let's see here. Bobby Van Meter, great coaching with Coach C at Westmoreland. He always had my back.
Yeah.
And here's the kid that kicked the field goal. Patrick Zenon said, "What a game."
Yeah.
Cody Gibson. Gibson was tough. He said the field goal.
Yeah.
And then let's see. Coach Hand, he's on here watching. I'll be talking to Coach Hand on Saturday. Says Coach C changed a lot of lives in Westmoreland. We all love him for everything he invested in us as individuals, as well as our entire community. And I'll have Herb on Saturday.
Yeah, tell him I want another hat.
Yeah, we'll have to get down there this year. I got some connections there too down in Charlotte. And then Juan Canaldo, how could you ever forget Juan Canaldo?
Juan,
To me, one of the best option quarterbacks at RFA. Says Coach Core gave me the chance at quarterback. Thanks for everything. Let's see what we got on here. We got a bunch on here. Oh, Wendy Woodilla says, "Hi, Jerry, Rock, and Shannon. Love you, Wendy and Tom." Thanks for watching, Wendy. Appreciate that. Shannon, what was your other question?
Okay, my other question was, obviously coaching is not easy. We know this. And there's a lot of young coaches out there that are wanting to become a coach, but hear a lot of negativity between parents and, athletes aren't what they used to be. What advice do you have as a coach that's been around for a long time to that new upcoming coach? What would you tell somebody that wanted to get into coaching but was a little bit hesitant because of all the negativity that kind of goes along with coaching nowadays?
Well, I mean, it's a new generation, like like Rock was talking about earlier. I mean, can you adapt to what's going on now? I mean, in football, we used to have drills that we call certain names that you can't say anymore. Okay. My advice was what I had to deal with for many years because like Rock said, I never coached really in my hometown, only JVs there for the 4 years. You're there to coach, and that's your job. I never really talk to parents after practice or after a game because you're going to get the one parent that's happy the way you're playing their son. Another parent ain't. I used to get done with the game. Go right in the locker room.
I remember
Goes,
that.
goes in this ear and goes out that ear. You can't get involved with parents because they're brutal.
And
They really
Dad, speaking of drills, Vinny Card says, I think I speak for all of us in JVs at RFA. We do not miss the Oklahoma drill. But
and you know something too, listen to that, and you know well, Rock. I was so used to all the years I coached at these schools. We were always underdogs. That I had to really, really condition kids because we only had 20-something kids in my first string. I didn't really have a second string,
yeah,
and so when I went to Rome for JVs, I was doing the same conditioning that I did at the other schools. And kids said, "Wow, with the varsity don't do that."
no, I remember that. I think it was, well, I think I was a ninth grader. I remember the night before equipment handout, I was going to play for you.
Yeah,
And we were doing signals in the kitchen for offense. And I got called the next morning, and Coach Hoke called and said, you know, what are you doing? And I said, I was sleeping. And he said, get down here. You got to get your equipment for varsity. But I'll never forget, one of the biggest things that crossed my mind was not about playing varsity, was if I played with you, all the conditioning, because you conditioned more than we did on varsity.
well, like I say, I was used to that because I never had a lot of kids on my teams, and we had to play 4 quarters of football with what I had, and we had to be in good shape. And majority of the time, plus less injuries I had because I couldn't afford injuries either, and that's why I used to do it. That was the old school because that's what I did when I played for RFA.
And Dad, the other thing I wanted to ask you, I know when you came back and you were the JV coach at RFA, again, from being a head coach, you come in, you come in as a JV coach, and you know, Coach Hoke was one of those guys that, you know, wanted you to run a lot of the same plays we did on varsity. And for the most part, you did.
Yeah,
but you always had a few wrinkles in there, and I know that had to be hard. How tough was that for you?
It was very tough. You know, I got yelled at. Coach Hoke yelled at me because I ran my 4-4 defense a lot, and instead of the 50. And I said, we just don't have the personnel. Well, I want you to run the 50. Well, we went undefeated. JVs that I first year, there's 6-0-1. We tied. I forget who we tied. But he yelled. He said, "No, you run." I said, "I know, Coach. I'm wrong." I says, "But when teams you don't like to lose, and the teams were running all over us with that 50." I says, "I just put it in 40, a changeup."
And what was it like, Dad? Because when you came back as a JV coach, I was on varsity, and some of the same coaches, right? Coach Bruce, Coach Ryan, a lot of those guys were around when you were playing. What was it like to see them still coaching, but now coaching me?
It felt good. I mean, it's always nice to see your kids follow. You know, it was a good feeling, and be able to see those coaches get to that age and still, you know, it's like me coaching some of the kids at Westmoreland that I coached their fathers. You know, it's nice to see people have that opportunity to coach. I mean, Coach Ryan was so happy that, number one, he coached you. Number two, he came to Westmoreland and coached with us when we were in the Dome. And, you know, he was my coach, you know, for freshman football and JV basketball. He was one of the best, and he enjoyed that. He wouldn't have went anywhere else when he had a little problem with RFA, but he came with us for what, 2 years?
Yeah.
And we went to the Dome. So
Well, you got some more comments on here. Frank Pulio says, Coach C gave me my start in coaching freshman at Proctor.
yeah, Frank's a good boy.
Tommy Beal. Tommy was tough. Coach, I enjoyed playing for Cord. Yep.
Yeah. I had a good JV team, boy.
Let's see what we got here.
I had Harper. That went to Connecticut. He was on JVs.
Well, you didn't lose many games on JVs.
No, we didn't. No. It's a lot different now.
Let me see. We got more comments. Herb says the conditioning drills at Westmont included running up and down the rock piles. Now I know how you got your podcast. Actually, Coach Han, the way I got that podcast had a lot to do with that. but John Burton actually was the one that kind of gave me the name, and I just kind of ran with it. So let's see what else. We got more here. We got Ross Rashford, one of my favorites.
Yeah, mine too.
Good to hear from Big C. Too bad Donnie ruined senior year in gym class.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. Scott Petoniak. Scott always is good to me to come on the radio on Saturday. Says, great show. Love listening to the family of dedicated coaches. Jerry, talk about being part of that 40-game unbeaten streak. As a player, the joys, the pressure. We got Dave Ross. He says, always fun digging stones out of our cleats after running the rock piles. But, the other thing is you guys, both you guys are both in the Rome Sports Hall of Fame. Shane, I think you went in back in 2017. Dad, I forget the year you went in. I had it written down and I forgot it. But Scott Petoniak was part of that class. Kermit Cadret, John Trela, Bruce Whiteman, and Rebecca Muldoon was part of that class. Right. How special, Dad, is it to be in the Hall of Fame and to be in there too with Shannon?
Let me tell you something. Hopefully, it'll be the three of us someday. And let me tell you something. When you're recognized by something special like the Hall of Fame, by people that really appreciate what you have done, not only coaching in Rome, but being, like myself, coaching at other schools and stuff like that. It means a lot, and especially in a special group of people that are in the Hall of Fame. They're all special, all of them. From the first one that ever got inducted, I can't remember who that was, but it's a real special, and it means a lot. It certainly does, and like I say, you work hard for things, and that's one of the rewards that you get for working hard and doing things that a coach should do, and you get recognized for it.
What would be some things, Dad, from going back, if you were back in coaching now, what would you do different that you didn't do years ago?
I probably would have been coaching college football, number one. I had some opportunities, your mother knows, when I was really young, and I know. So I got to know David Brown when they were recruiting him, Jimmy Tressel, that was a head football coach at Ohio State, and he was the head coach at Youngstown State. And Willie, our cousin there, lived in Youngstown. And I used to go down to the spring practice every year. And, Kenny Canaster was with that group. All the guys that were at Syracuse, because they were recruiting David at Syracuse. But what I'm trying to say is that I had a couple of offers, but I would, if I had to do it over again, I think I would coach college.
And when you look back now and we look at Coach Hand, and I know we always talk highly of him, but it's nice to see, a lot of your old players, Dad, when we're out, they still call you coach, and the impact you had now, the impact that you've had even now to this day is special. But talk about what it's like, for those types of memories with your players.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. Guys are 50-something years old now. I'm an old fart, 70 almost. And, you got these guys who had families and coming up to me in their 50s, like Kirby's group. I mean, it was and Proctor. I mean, those guys are in their middle 50s now. And, it's just the respect that you try to teach the kids when they play for you to respect. I still call my coaches Coach Evans.
Yep.
I call all my coaches Coach. I mean, it's the way I was brought up, and that's respect, and that's the way it is. But it's so nice to see some of the guys you coach with their kids, their families, and that's what it's all about, coaching. It ain't just the winning and losing factors.
So, Dad, take Shannon and I here, because obviously, I always say Shannon's the winningest coach in the family. You're the one that's coached the longest, and I was really just getting started. I'm not anywhere near where you guys were, but when you look at Shannon and myself, what are some of the things that we do similar to what you did, and then what are some things differently that Shannon and I do from a coaching perspective that you didn't do?
That's a tough one there, but no, you guys are.
That's why I get paid the big bucks.
No, you guys are very organized, structured. You're organized. Like Shane and I see year round, and you're around. And she's always uh, organized. Like Coach Ryan. Coach Ryan was very organized. Rock, you're organized. You know, um, I don't know what I would say that you guys do different than I would
Shane,
watch.
Shane, how about for you though? For as far as some of the things that we follow Dad his whole career coaching wise. What are some things that you've learned from him?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned from Dad with being a coach is having a connection with my players. I as I'm sitting here thinking, I mean, obviously I was a little kid going to practice with Dad at Proctor, but the team that stands out to me the most is that 1986 team, Dad, at Westmoreland, and I look at the closeness even now, all of them that continue to reach out to you. And I think for me as a coach, my biggest philosophy is making that connection with your players, because
Oh yeah.
I truly believe if your players and you as your coach, the coach is not connected, you're not going to be successful. If your team doesn't trust you, you're not going to be
Oh
successful.
God,
And
yeah.
I see that with Dad in all the years that he coached, the relationship that he had with his players.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the times that really stood out for me was when we left Waterville, Dad, and I think it was my first year at Sequoia, which would have been, the John Piersma senior team that was, I think, probably would have been one of our best teams.
Oh yeah.
It was my first year at Sequoia, and we went down to Waterville, and we beat them. And after the game, those Waterville kids came on our sideline in tears, crying because of the respect that they had for you, for me, and our coaches. And I really think that was a really tall tale moment, and just showed you the kind of respect that those kids had for us. But I think for me, guys, because again, I obviously didn't coach anywhere near you two, but I even think for the business world that I'm in now and the jobs that I've had, I've always walked into positions that were dumpster fires. They weren't jobs that were attractive jobs to walk into. They were jobs where you had to come in and get your feet wet, and you really had to kind of build a team, build a culture, an environment, to really get everybody on the same page. So it's not sports, but a lot of those tendencies, they carry over with you.
Right.
See, but that's where I differ from you guys, because look what I walked into. I walked into an extremely successful program in Camden. I mean, Camden is known for their field hockey program, and that goes back to when, Marianne O'Connor was coach and Lynn Sharf coached. And so for me, I had to walk into these shoes of two very successful women, and Marianne was an awesome coach and got a lot of their players. So, but Rock, I gotta say one thing before the show ends. I have to give a shout out to Mom. So Mom, I know you're listening because I set her up on the iPad upstairs, but Mom is the backbone of our family, the person that's behind the scenes that kept all of us fed and everything else. So Mom, we owe all our success, to you.
Well, I tried. Mom was one of the first guests I tried to get on the rock pile to talk about business, but she wouldn't come on the dang show.
Well, let me tell you something. Both of you know that if you don't have, like, Mom was always supportive of me. If you're going to be a coach and you ain't got support from your wife or your husband, you're in trouble. Because, like you say, Shannon, I mean, when I was, and I coached out of town, I wasn't local. I was always out of town, and she had to take care of you. She was like the father of the house, because I was doing triple sessions back then. I wouldn't get home from Utica Proctor until late at night, and I mean, she definitely. I mean, like I say, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to coach.
Dad, a couple last things I wanted to ask you, coaching wise. Who are some of the coaches, that played a key role, in your career coaching? Who are some of those guys?
Well, like I said, my dad was very important in my life because, like I say, he would have probably been a good linebacker, fullback. He was quick. He caught me running once. I said something to him, but he knew the game, boy. He after one of my games, and he never missed a game. He flew to Georgia with us. He went he went to every one of my college games. He went to every one of my high school games. But you know, Coach Evans was a big part of my life. I got, everybody says it, and I'm not going to not say it. And I say it to this day that he could have been a coach in any sport there was. I mean, what he taught us guys, the JV baseball, the freshman basketball. I mean, I used in my coaching career all my life. Um, my Coach Ryan was a big part of my life too. Coach Ryan was a very intelligent, smart, organized coach. Basketball, JVs, and freshman football. But my college coach, Joe Sable, was a very, very good coach that I looked up to. It was a big difference between coach high school and college, but he's one. But Vince Lombardi was my main, and Joe Paterno as far as college goes. I learned a lot from them through books. I used to read a lot about them. They were my two favorites.
I'm glad you didn't say Jim Tressel at Ohio State, because I would have probably exited the show here.
Well, they taught me a lot, believe me, because I used to go down there every year.
And Dad, the last thing I want to ask you, and then Shane, I don't know if you have anything else you want to ask Dad, but Dad, I always get into conversations with people around here because they always say when the base left RFA sports in general, I'm not just say just football, but sports in general went downhill. And I always say, when you look back at some of the best teams that Rome's had, and I say my 96 team went all the way to the state championship.
Yeah.
The core group of kids were Rome kids.
Oh, I agree with you. We only had a few on the varsity when I played. We had Tracy Stubbs, the 6'5" split end, a couple linemen. That's about it. The rest of them were all Romans, and we didn't have a lot of, And when we won those 30-something games, they weren't all base kids, believe me.
Shane, you got anything else you want to ask Dad?
For once, Rock, I think I'm kind of speechless. I had a bunch of questions that either you answered or asked Dad, or the Dad answered in his 30-minute long speech at the beginning.
Shut up.
Part of his thing. But no, I pretty much think he hit it all.
Well, let me tell you something before we end here, that me and your mother are very proud of both of you for the people that you've grown up to be, as parents, as your jobs, your coaching. And we're very lucky to have two great kids like you.
Well, I know, Rock. I'll just say one more thing. I can honestly speak on behalf of this. I think, and Rock can agree with me, I know being an athlete and even the person that I am today and the philosophies that I live by, I mean, I'm very grateful for you and Mom for holding us accountable and, not that you didn't take it easy on us. I don't mean that. But I'm glad that you were hard on us, because even today, I just think how I am as a person and my work ethic all stems from how tough you guys were on Rock and I. And, you didn't let us give up on things, and we had to fight through, the different obstacles that we had to overcome in our life. And, as parents, you could have said, oh, it's okay. Nope, you don't have to deal with that. And you basically said, you know what, suck it up, deal with it.
Yeah,
and it was a lot of life lessons. And that's why I think we're successful in who we are, because of you and Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think too, I mean, Shane, you hit it on the spot, but I also think too, for me is, watching Dad's career, coaching and seeing the ups and downs that, he went through, even from the outside, at different programs, and how he reacted. He never lost focus, and the main focus was always the kids.
Mm-hmm.
He did a good job of blocking out everything that happened outside. And I think that's special. And I also think that, like I said, you deal with tragedies, and Dad dealt. You had a lot of those that you dealt with, unfortunately. And again, trying to rally your teams after stuff like that hits you in the face, and trying to stand up in front of your teams and players of kids that look up to you, I think is a really tough thing to do. And the other thing I'll just end with this, Dad, is, again, I still say to this day, the programs that you were at, there's not another coach, and I'll put a lot of coaches up there against you, but there's not another coach who could have walked into some of those programs with average players and turned them into not just football players, but turned them into fine young men. And that says a lot, because, like I said, you could walk into the programs where you have great athletes, and you can win a lot of football games. You can win a lot of field hockey games with good players, but it's the coaches that can get the most out of average kids, I think, that tells what type of coach you are. And that doesn't have to be wins and losses. I just think that the later part of life, to see how those players develop and grow up, I think that means more than the wins and losses.
100%.
So
that was my strength.
So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate you
All
both.
right,
Shan, thanks for jumping on. And Dad, thanks for jumping on. I'll talk to you both.
Okay,
All right. Bye, Rock.
So another great show. That was the first time I actually brought a guest in the middle of the show, and I'm sure people are saying you can't go a show without bringing my sister on. My sister's been on the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch numerous times. My dad has too. That's the first time I've ever had my dad, one-on-one for about an hour. So I appreciate my dad coming on. Next week, I end the first month of the Legends show. I talked to another coach who means more than me, he's close to me. Another one that's like family, and that's Coach Mike 80. He'll join me next week. But I want to make sure I give one more shout out here before I sign off to Dave Kingwater. Dr. David Kingwater, proud to serve his home community with the highest quality of chiropractic care. If you're in pain and looking for answers, call Kingwater Chiropractic at 315-768-8284. Our caring and compassionate staff will answer any of your questions and get scheduled for an immediate appointment today. So thanks to Dave Kingwater for being a sponsor for tonight's show. Thanks again to the Rome Sports Hall of Fame for really helping me put this on. We got 2 more months, and I'll tell you, if the second month lives up to the first month, it's going to be even that much better. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Rock Pile. You can follow me on YouTube. You can follow me on Facebook. But I really appreciate everybody's time. Saturday morning on the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. Catch it on WKAL Talk Radio 1450, FM 103.3. Westmoreland native Herb Hand's going to join me on the show. Herb's the new offensive line coach at Charlotte. I'm excited to talk to Coach Hand. He's family to my family. So make sure to tune in Saturday morning to that. All right. On behalf of the Rock Pile tonight, as I say every week, on Wednesday nights, the Rock Pile is where dreams become reality. Enjoy the weekend, everybody.